a mirror, a fence, a guide. Do we all like what we see when we look in the mirror? I have one of those magnifying mirrors that blatantly reflects back to me every little flaw in my face, and there are so many. What I really want is a magic mirror that will assure me that I'm the fairest, the most handsome, the most charming, just like in a fairy tale. But a proper mirror simply reflects reality without any editorializing. We need that kind of mirror not only for our physical being, but for our soul. We need a soul mirror that will honestly reflect back to us what we're really like inside. Sure, a soul mirror couldn't actually fix anything any more than a physical mirror can fix all the flaws in my face. But we can't heal what we can't or won't see. I wonder how willing we are to avail ourselves of our Lenten practice of self-examination to let that practice be a soul mirror so that we can see ever more clearly both the beauty and the brokenness, the grace and the guilt within. Until we see clearly, we miss the gift of healing. We don't have to like everything we see in that mirror of self-examination to be helpful. In fact, that mirror works best when we face the truths we don't like. A mirror, a fence, a guide. You know the saying, good fences make good neighbors, right? Although its origins are old and unclear, it forms the basis for a well-known Robert Frost poem that in part goes like this. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under my neighbor's pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head, why do they make good neighbors? Our reaction to this proverb and poem likely depends in no small part on whether we hear it as referring to boundaries or constraints. Good boundaries serve an important purpose in keeping us safe and safely connected with one another. It's the fences as constraints image. It's that image against which we bristle. We like to believe that full and complete autonomy is our right, at least for those of us who are responsible and law-abiding citizens. I'm sure others might need constraints of civil law because there are those people who can't constrain themselves. We need those fences to manage others' bad behavior. But boy, when we consider that those fences might constrain us in ways we don't want, we rebel, we fight, we push against that. But I would say that we miss the complete point when we deny our own participation in unrestrained behavior that ends up harming others. The constraints of civil law aren't simply about individual behavior, but about building a just society. And that good fence does enable us to be better neighbors. A mirror, a fence, a guide. We've obviously been considering the notion of law, and it's this third metaphor of the law of God as a guide that most concerns people of faith. One hopes that as we grow in faith, as we more deeply commit to following the ways of Jesus, that the law of God's infinite love will become our fundamental guide and enlighten every step we take. As we let the way of love be our guide, our standard, our benchmark, we become free from the fear of sin and death. We become free to abandon the folly of self-absorption and the inanity of merely looking out for ourselves. We become liberated by God, by the capacity to see God's law in all its self-sacrificing, self-offering glory. We gain a growing capacity to shape the fundamental disposition of our soul toward the true essence of the law of God. This law, this way of love that eternally bends toward the grand notion that forgiveness, welcome, and justice for you, for me, and especially for those who are oppressed degraded and cast aside by our unredeemed society, this way of love forms the foundation as well as all the magnificent adornment of the kingdom of God. This Lent, I'm inviting us each week to take up, to reflect on, to ruminate over, to luxuriate in a simple but profound verse from the psalm appointed for the day. I'm reminding us each week that the Psalms give expression to every possible facet of human nature and human experience. Today, it's the 7th verse of Psalm 19 that is our gift to receive with joy. It says, "The law of the Lord is perfect and revives the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure and gives wisdom to the innocent." The law of the Lord is perfect and revives the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure and gives wisdom to the innocent. The law of the Lord is perfect and revives the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure and gives wisdom to the innocent. Our Christian tradition has had an inconsistent relationship with the notion of law. We have often let the concept of God's law get lost or confused as we have experienced the grace we know in our relationship with Jesus. We have come to frame law and grace as somehow mutually exclusive through centuries of propounding the ill-advised doctrine of supersessionism. What a great word. The notion that Christianity has fixed and or replaced the supposed shortcomings of Judaism such that the grace we have through Jesus Christ supersedes the Jewish Torah or law. We have proof-texted and oversimplified our scriptures because we like to think ourselves a bit superior to others. So we have taken out of context and without good rigorous thought passages of the Christian scriptures to say that the law has been replaced by God's grace. We too easily put law and grace or law and autonomy against each other and then see any notion of God's law as unduly constraining or simply laying guilt upon us. The truth for us is more wholesome and nuanced. The law can serve, as 16th century reformers proposed, as a mirror, a fence, and a guide that opens us up to receive grace upon grace and enlightens our calling to extend that grace in our life. Seeing God's law of love and the beauty of its vision of justice truly revives the soul and is the source of wisdom. So let's rethink, revision, renew our appreciation of God's law of love today. As the psalmist says, it revives the soul and gives us wisdom, and those are well worth slowing down to ponder and reconsider. And for God's law that surpasses any form of human law, for God's loving guidance and promise that the law of love, the way of love, will revive and enlighten us, for God's life-giving love in giving us the law as a guide with our whole heart and body, soul and mind, we give thanks.